Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me in the back? Thank you. Please call the roll.
Councilmember Val.
Here.
Councilmember Cousins will be absent this evening. Councilmember Fisher.
Yes.
Councilmember Knight.
Here.
Councilmember Michelle.
Present.
Councilmember Smith.
Here.
Student Rep Covert and Malik are both absent and present. Mayor Field.
Here. We have two sets of meeting minutes to approve this evening, one from our regular city council meeting on September 23rd, and the second from a special city council meeting on October 3rd.
I'll move the two sets of minutes.
Second.
Moved by Smith, second by Fisher. Thank you both. Any discussion or comments, Mr. Smith?
I have two minor things.
Okay.
On page one, the regular council minutes, the date is incorrect. Should be the 23rd. And then on the page 7, which is the first page of the special city council meeting, and under H, which got moved up, change the word movie to move. Motion Smith, support Bell, to move instead of movie.
That would be a horrible movie by then.
And that was the only two changes.
Okay. Ms. Fisher, anything to add? Other members of council? No comments? Seeing none, all those in favor of approving the meeting minutes with two small corrections, signify by saying aye, please.
Aye.
Those opposed? Thank you, motion carries. The posted agenda had Jennifer Olmstead from Ann Arbor Spark coming this evening, but she notified us this morning that she had something come up, emergency come up in the family, so she's not able to be here tonight, and will be at a future meeting to be determined. So we're down to item E, approval of the agenda.
I'm going to read what is presented.
There is additional
It's just on.
stuff on the vacating of an alley.
This is just info.
Yes.
Part of Michelle's report.
And then there's also some pictures.
Those go along with the proposal for, that you're going to be considering.
Okay, so those are pictures for item, one second,
Item 4, L4.
L4. Okay, thank you.
Second.
And we just have to add Halloween trick or treat hours, so I forgot to put that on. So Halloween 5:30 to 7:30 is a consent.
Okay, adding Halloween as a consent item.
So that is the additional.
So we got to add consideration of Halloween hours from 5, what are they?
It's the 5:30 to 7:30 on
Okay.
October 31st.
Okay, just want to make sure we report them correctly. All right, so who had the motion? Motion by Fisher and a second by Smith, was it? Okay, to approve the agenda with the addition of J2. Okay, any discussion required? All seeing no comments, all those in favor of approving the agenda, signify by saying aye, please.
Aye.
Those opposed? Thank you. Okay, we have no public hearings this evening. So we're on page 2 of the agenda. We are down to non-arranged participation. This is the first of 2 opportunities on the agenda for those of you in the audience to speak on any topic. If you wish to speak, we ask that you state your name and address, and you have 5 minutes. Does anyone wish to speak this evening?
Okay. Introductions or scouts?
Are the Boy Scouts here for any particular reasons that we should know about? Maybe we can prove you're here by if you just give us your name and reason. Come on up to the podium. Yeah, come on up. We're pretty friendly.
Okay. My name is Daniel Edwards, and I'm here to complete a merit badge for Eagle Scout called Citizenship of the Community.
Great. Welcome.
I am Martino Pavesi, and I am here for the same reason.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you.
You've also got other students in here.
No, they might be here for different reasons, that's okay. All right, thank you for introducing yourselves.
they're all not here for the same reason, but I think there's somebody in the back that is here for another reason.
She's here with,
She's with me, she's my,
Oh, okay, but she is here with, hey,
I'm here for school, for science.
good, welcome.
Okay, seeing no further public comment, we'll move down to communications. There are two in the packet, our upcoming meeting list and our signed calendar. I'm not sure if there's any changes needed to any of those things. I can tell you that the Watts meeting on October 16th has been canceled, or was canceled this week.
Oh, boy, I don't have that on here.
Okay, I'll keep the meeting moving. Everybody must be interested in getting to the Lions game. Okay, I wore the colors. Okay, try it anyway. Okay, try it. Report is up next, and our first report this evening is from our Public Services Superintendent. Dan, how are you?
Good. Good evening, council.
Good evening, sir. And he has his Lions logo on.
Just to remind you, I didn't know if you knew.
I'm on it, 7:06, buddy, we're working.
I provided a written report in your council packet, and I'd like to start with a couple updates on projects we got going on. Forest Street, sidewalk, stormwater work, we got grass coming up.
That's good, that's very good.
Yeah, I think it looks really good. Central Street, I stopped by there before I came to the meeting, and they were putting the last layer down to asphalt. Tomorrow, they're supposed to be cutting crosswalks and weather permitting.
Nice. Remind me where they're going to start with those? Which, do you know where they're starting? It doesn't really matter, I guess, I just thought.
I thought it was Monument Park and Fifth Street.
I think it's, I want to say it's 4th and then the one at Monument Park.
Okay.
Yeah, still want them to be able to get.
Oh, fourth, yeah. The first two, and then the middle is last.
And I don't know if you've had a chance to go down there, but that looks really nice.
It does.
We can do that in front of my house anytime. That turned out really well.
I thought the project was going to get to your house the way it was going.
It kind of did. We picked up the stormwater, you know, that we left a few years ago, so
Yep.
I think it's been a really good project.
It does, it looks really good.
My last update is we have got hydro seed down at the wastewater plant, so we're ready for Thursday. Do you have,
And that starts again at 4?
4 to 6.
4 to 6.
And I talked to F&D's marketing person, and you can tell he does these a lot, and I don't. But it's going to be more of an open house style, you know, people can come in, we'll take small groups on tours, there's nothing, they're going to have some cider and donuts. So it's,
Nice.
you know, kind of a laid back, no
Then
like
they're gonna
speeches,
put up a
maybe
tent,
some,
just
yeah,
in
some
case
kind
it
of case the
rains.
weather. And then some like before photos and stuff, but nothing super.
That's great. So if you really want to know what goes on in government, you can come to the wastewater treatment plant and see all the interesting things that go on there. They're putting them on my calendars right now.
Right, yeah.
And also, on page 14 and 15 where I report, the fourth well that's down behind the basketball court, Ryan Drive down there, we put some stone in there because we had a problem this spring trying to do preventative maintenance. We couldn't get the big trucks down there. So we put stone in there, which would give us year-round access, obviously, that we needed. But I did get a phone call from a resident that was concerned about what it looked like. And then the one photograph on page 14, that's looking in between the two houses. Obviously, I didn't go stand on their back decks. So I told her I would ask if maybe we could plant some trees back there to maybe block that, if that's something council would support.
Yeah, a few evergreens or something, or
Something, we figure out.
arborvitaes or something. Yeah,
Right.
I think you guys can figure that out.
Okay.
Does anybody have a problem with that?
The only other thing that I think that might potentially be an issue is I don't think they know how much property they own back there. They only own about 20 feet off the back, and they're mowing considerably more. So I asked Chris Donikowski, he hasn't got to it yet, to survey it for us, so we know exactly where it is. But sometimes you gotta be careful what you ask for.
Yep.
Okay, thank you. Is there any questions on my written report?
No questions on the report?
Thank you very
I
much.
think we're good, Dan. Thank you.
Thanks, Dan.
Next up this evening is our report from our Community Development Manager. Michelle, good evening. How are you?
I'm fine. How are you this evening?
Good.
Sorry, a little distracted. How's council this morning? This evening? Okay, good.
Long day.
It's been a long day. Yes, yes. Okay, so you've got my report in front of you, but before I go into the updates, and I do have a few, do you have any questions for me?
So is the ZBA meeting on the 21st canceled or not canceled? I thought it was happening.
The DDA October?
No, the ZBA, October 21st.
It is happening.
Happening. So it's not canceled.
Yes.
You don't
No,
have a
the woman
public
with-
hearing, but you're doing.
Right, she
administrative.
withdrew, and that was just miscommunication on my part.
Okay, because you're going to adopt minutes and bylaws and.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
but no public hearing.
Yes.
Okay.
The November ZBA meeting will end up getting canceled
Okay, thanks.
because of the,
Oh, right, not being able to use the room.
okay. Well, if you don't have any questions for me, then I'm going to jump right into this. Master plan has been updated. Planning Commission made their final little tweaks to it. We had very little input from the surrounding communities or agencies. The few comments that we had, Planning Commission reviewed them, made changes or not as noted. Excuse me. And they've set the public hearing for their November 4th meeting. They will get, I've got the final draft from Megan. She made those final changes, edits that Planning Commission asked for. The document arrived this afternoon. I'll be looking it over tomorrow so that it's ready to be printed when the public hearing notice goes in the paper tomorrow. It'll get put online. There'll be a copy or two in the office for people to look at. I will also send a copy down to the library so that if people are there and want to look at it, there's a copy there as well. Excuse me. Okay, so that's the Planning Commission. The Michigan logos, the signs for Jolly Pumpkin. So
Michelle, can you back up just real quick?
Sure.
On the Planning Commission stuff?
Yes, sir.
So relative to Mr. Lansky's email that you mentioned about traffic, and the bullet that talks about identifies the need for a study to determine that could mitigate congestion,
Right.
to what level?
That is to be decided. You'll remember there's an implementation table in that implementation section that lays out a number of different projects. It assigns the responsibility, it gives a time frame. That's where that study is, besides also the text in the document.
Okay.
So how that gets, what that scope of work would be something that's open for both Planning Commission and Council to coordinate on.
Yeah, my point is that mitigation is obviously a subjective.
Absolutely.
Congestion is a suggestion.
Right, it's extremely broad.
Subjective
How are
broad
we gonna-
thing, so.
Yeah, okay. So the Trailblazer signs, I met with Nate from Michigan Logos last week. We walked Dan Hoy. We were supposed to walk Baker Road with the Road Commission. Unfortunately, one of the people we were meeting with was sick and the other had a family emergency. So I met with Nate. We looked at Baker Road anyway, and we looked at Dan Hoy. There are a couple of signs on Dan Hoy. One is the sign that says Dexter. Sorry, hang on, I've got it. One's a right turn only because it starts the decel lane. There isn't another one until you're almost to the turn. They are amenable, let me put it that way, to putting the logo sign on an existing pole instead of putting another pole in the ground, which is something that if I remember, what you were looking for, is not to just put a bunch of signs. The thing I'll have to work with Patrick and Marcus on is does there need to be a clearance under that sign? And if so, then we may have to raise the pole. So we'd only need the one on Dan Hoy. And as far as the Baker Road one, we may have an alternative to not even putting one on county right-of-way, because that would also have to be a shared sign. I don't know if the county will do that. This would really be the first time the county even permits it. So we identified a number of potential locations where a shared situation was. And the one that Michigan Logos actually likes the best, and this, I need your feedback on it. When you come up to the roundabout, there's a sign on the corner of Dan Hoy and Taylor that one says Baker Road and one says Dan Hoy with a little arrow. They'd like to put the logo sign on one of the posts of the Dan Hoy sign. I knew I should have had pictures.
Well, we can
Sorry.
put this in your next report too, it's not a rush.
Right.
I mean,
It's not a
something
rush.
gonna be
It's something
decided in the
that-
next 2 weeks.
Okay. So those are the things. So I will follow up with you again on that. Some more good news coming out of our industrial park. So, K-Space just came through with their expansion on one of the pieces of property that they own to the north. North of that is another 2-acre parcel that they own, and they have agreed to sell it to UIS, and UIS can now do their expansion. So that'll be coming in sometime next year, the expansion plan, but the sale will be going through relatively quickly. As you know, that Maui Properties, which is Dave Hughes, owns the large portion as you come into the industrial park. He has agreed to sell one of the original lots, lot 13, which is 2 acres if I'm not mistaken, to Doors and Drawers. They worked out an arrangement that they could use that. So I'm trading some messages right now with Chuck Nance to find out exactly what we might see on the horizon there. I have a meeting with Steve Jensen. He's the pharmacist, owns Jensen's Pharmacy in Saline. It looks like he's interested in opening a small pharmacy here in the city, in Dexter Crossing. I do not know right now what space that one would be, but I hope to have more details by the time your next meeting comes.
Thank you.
La Fontaine. So we all know that they have parking issues. They don't have enough room for their inventory. Some of that they have control over, how much they order. Some of it, though, they don't have any control over. They get X number from the factory, and they don't have any control over that. It was very interesting in talking with them how they have to, it's part of managing the business. They knew a strike could come on, and if so, they didn't know how long it would take, but they have to be prepared for that. In this case, the strike is going on a long time. That's affecting inventories. By them having more inventory now, helps them navigate through these more difficult times that the strike is producing. With that said, employees are allowed to park on the Dan Hoy side of Ryan Drive that abuts La Fontaine, but only in that portion that abuts their property. They aren't permitted to park in front of Community Park or go down into the subdivision. For the most part, we've worked out the trial and error. Somebody, parks a new car there, you gotta move it. They've been extremely receptive. They've acted on things and got them out of the way before I even hear about them, so that by the time somebody's commented it or complained to me, they've already taken care of it. So I have to say they have been very proactive and receptive and working very hard to try and stay within the rules and regs that we have. I am working with Patrick and Marcus right now because the employees aren't doing it, but sometimes people who come to visit the dealership, they're parking in the driveway approach, right up to the point where the sidewalk would be. And that presents a problem for people who are riding their bikes or walking. Somebody driving in may not see. You would hope that somebody that's walking or riding their bike would have enough forethought to, not just run through or bike through, but pay attention to. So in talking with LaFontaine and talking with Courtney, the sheriff cannot ticket somebody who's in an approach here. It's not against the law unless we say it's against the law. So putting a sign on Ryan Drive a few feet before the driveway approach actually starts, no parking beyond the sign, will hopefully prevent anybody from parking, but if they do, the sheriff can then do a ticket. So right now, Patrick and Marcus are studying the warrants, and I presume they will meet the warrants and we'll come back to you with the request. Okay. Any questions on that? I am working with Ann Arbor Spark on the business summit. I had hoped that we would have one earlier this year. It's coming down to the end, but we're working on it. The biggest thing is when you're trying to have a business summit that's, a breakfast, networking, just basic updates, I need a big space or a fairly large space. I love using the library, but they don't open till 9. Sometimes there are things going on in the morning here, so I can't do it here. The businesses are always very generous, but they don't all have they don't all have space. And I can't always go to Northern United and agree all the time for it. So I did have a conversation with the sales manager at LaFontaine. They have a large space. I can do a networking, and they're willing to host it. So we're just figuring out the last few details, but either the 13th or 14th of November, and I should be sending out a save the date by the end of this week. Let's see. The last one, the last one is just the alley vacation, and you have, in my report, it says that the process is, as I've outlined it, for Mr. Smith, as well as any future. That's what I passed out to you. I know you haven't had a chance to look at it because it just was given to you, but if you've got questions about it, let me know. I think it's a sound process for considering them in the future. So you can let me know if you want something more formal, if you want it to be something where an applicant goes to the planning commission and then to council. I tried to keep it simple and comprehensive, so just give me your feedback when you have a chance. Believe it or not, that's it, folks.
Good report.
Thank you.
Questions for Michelle? Thank you for all your work and everything.
Thank you.
Does anybody have anything to mention under any of the board and commission reports? I don't see anything bolded, but including basket.
Well, I'll throw out here the Cap Guard organized, now it's Representative Lozinski Transportation Town Hall, Saturday, October 19th, 10 to 2, Chelsea Senior Center. You have plenty of time to get home from that before the Michigan-Penn State game now, on account of the game being late at night.
And that was in the last email update too, so this is Facebook.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we'll move down to city manager report, please.
So we haven't heard back anything yet from the family on the 7525 Parent River Drive purchase. If we do, we'll let you know, but I haven't seen anything yet. Justin had put in here about the auction, and we ended up with the final tally total being $5,600. So the prices went up considerably in the last day, like they generally do. So the leaf machine, our old leaf machine was actually purchased from a city in Ohio, or purchased by a city in Ohio. And then the mower was purchased from somebody in Texas, so I'm gonna be kind of surprised if that one goes through. But anyway, it's been a really good way to raise a little bit of extra revenue and get rid of some things we don't need anymore. I did put in the report about the Central Street. OHM had asked if we wanted to do anything to kind of commemorate the opening of the road, just because this is a culmination of we started design, I think, in '09. The first construction was 2012 of Central Street. This is the last block, so if council wants to do something like that, we haven't, I think the last one we did was the Main Street Bridge. Yeah. That it doesn't have to be anything extremely elaborate, but we have about 2 weeks, I think, because the crosswalks will need time to cure. So probably 10 days at least, I would think, before, once they're poured, before they're done. So if anybody has any feedback on that.
Parade.
A parade, yeah. It will be, I guess, once the cars can take it again. We can come back to that. The one thing I did want to ask, we are getting our final SAW grant reports, and I didn't know how council wanted to go through those. Did you want to have just a work session before a meeting? Probably November, I would think, we'll be ready for that. They're interesting. I mean, I think they turned out really well. There's a lot of work into them. But it'll be good to just sit down and go through them. There's basically 3 of them, but I think we can probably get through that in an hour and a half. Any questions? So is that acceptable? We have to submit it. Well, we don't actually submit them to the state, but we have to tell the state we did them at the end of December.
That's okay. Yep, set it up when you're ready. When you're ready.
Okay, and then I know the chief mentioned earlier about the HART ambulance. He references the agreement that we have, which is basically the former chief and the HART people saying, can we store the HART ambulance, and me saying yes. So it's not like some formal in stone agreement, but it, seemed okay at the time. Well, now that it looks like the Avalon project is going to move forward, we're going to have a storage space issue that's going to be fairly imminent, because we store things outside of 651 Dan Hoy, fencing, ice rink supplies, and any off-season equipment. So I was thinking that we could perhaps give the HART team some notice, 4 months notice, and say, hey, we're gonna need you to find a new location to store the ambulance. Potentially Dexter Township, Webster Township, I don't, maybe at the church somewhere, but unless council has any concern about that, I was gonna at least reach out to them and let them know that they needed to start thinking, because we really could use that space. Technically, the fire department only pays for 40% of the building, though I would argue they would use a substantial percentage more, and we just need a little bit of that back. So. And at least with some notice, they're not getting pushed out next week or anything. Hopefully the pedestrian safety project starts next week. We mentioned about the Chambers Ice Festival, which we did do years ago. Probably been about, 4 years since they tried it, but they want to rejuvenate and restart that. The timeline for Mill Creek Park Phase 2 has been updated. Hopefully that's set in stone now. Council will see scopes for construction services at some point from a little bit from OHM, because they had to be involved, and then because it's a TAP project, and then JJR.
Was that lady she wanted to talk about was she the one that submitted the one for the stop signs, or the lady in the ambulance?
No, she's here with,
yeah,
no,
I thought
she has nothing to do with it.
Said something about school.
No, she was here for,
okay.
Yeah, that's in here as well, the report back from OHM on the Grand Street stop sign request. So I think we'll move forward with implementing some of the other suggestions in the report. Maybe some new pavement markings which we could have put down when they do the markings for the crosswalks, weather dependent, and the vegetation, and the potentially council could see a request for the no parking. We could try that temporarily with some barrels and see if it works. From the DPW's looking at the situation, those aren't parents parking there, those are staff parking there, so we could potentially block those off and see if it helps.
Because that was never engineered, the school put that in, and we didn't have control over that at Penn Plan time. It's always been a problem because it's got school ideas on it, and you've got a street coming through, and the parking up there is so tight. Somebody parked me in the other day. I couldn't believe it, but they just pull up really fast, jump out, take off in the school to get to something. It's dense, and I think the school needs to look at that. That could get better.
Right.
But anyway, I see why they think it's power, but
Yeah, I don't know the stop
it's not
signs are
necessarily
the
a
answer
power
to it.
problem. Ours alone, I mean.
Okay. Anything else?
So that pro ribbon cutting or con ribbon cutting or, I don't.
Do you have a thought on it?
Well, I mean, I don't think that we spend a lot of time actually celebrating and enjoying good things. I think we get bogged down in negative things all of the time. So any
Oh, I see.
opportunity I have to have something good is always going to be pro for me, but
Okay, I'm in favor of that.
that's just me.
I'm in.
I mean, I'm not looking to like hold up the opening or anything for doing it.
So I think it's a good idea. Staff supports it.
Noted.
Oh, good. You know how forty then, right?
There's a front row picture spot for it, right? Anything else to report on? Okay, my written report is in the packet. I will note the DDA meeting this week is expected to be very light, mostly just invoice approval. So I don't think there's going to be much happening there. I'm going to be meeting with the chair of the ACH committee. Law reached out to me to report on their last meeting, and I understand there's a few members that may be looking to step aside or step down potentially, and anyway, she wanted to fill me on what's going on. So I have yet to set that meeting up, but it'll be after hours sometime this week, I hope. In the same vein, I was contacted by a resident, Mrs. Cheryl, who was interested in the Avalon project. She's the one that potentially pulled the petitions to try to put something on the ballot. So I've made arrangements. She and I are going to meet at the library tomorrow at 7:30. I'm not quite sure what direction or what she wants to ask me, but we're going to meet and just discuss the Avalon project. I received an email from Karen Dowling, who lives to the northwest of the potential Huron River Drive property that we submitted the offer on that Courtney mentioned. She's the resident that lives there, and her email was generally not excited about seeing a major parking lot there. And I just responded that at this point the reason we submitted the offer was because our Parks and Recreation Plan identifies a goal of having access to the river. That doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to turn into a large parking lot. There's absolutely no plan for the property other than access. Now, how we grant that access or how it's done has yet to be determined. I even told them that we weren't even sure at this point if we might be the ultimate owner of the property. So I did communicate back to her and just wanted you to know that in case you either know her or received a similar email from her. And then the last thing I wanted to report is I heard from a school board member today who asked some questions about the billboard that we had on pedestrian safety. Ron Dar asked if that was ours or some other group that had put that up, and I just told him that we had put it up to promote, the importance of pedestrian safety in the community. He had a comment that suggested he wasn't sure what the message meant, but I told him I thought it was pretty clear. That's Ron. That's Ron. So, but it's been up, and I actually is it down now?
Probably should be. If not, we're getting free time. Because it's
I
been
can't
up for
remember this
over a
morning
month.
when I drove back, but anyway, just wanted to report out those 4 communications that I've had with area residents / members of the community. So, does anybody have any questions for me on anything in the report? The training session, MML training session went well. Courtney did a great job presenting our process. Like free advertising for her in front of a bunch of other communities who are looking to hire,
You don't need to worry about that.
No, she did a really good job and was well received, so.
Manchester's pretty far along. They've actually just submitted to the state to do a review of their petition. They're a little further along than I realized.
Okay, seeing no further questions for me, There are no council member reports this evening, so I will move on to consent agenda, reminding whoever that there are two items.
I move to approve the 2 items listed on the consent agenda, bills and payroll in the amount of $634,027.61, and the establishment of Halloween trick-or-treat hours on the 31st.
From 5:30 to 7:30.
All right?
This way we get it officially in the minutes. Okay, so motion by Fisher, support by Bell. Ms. Jones, if you would call the vote, please.
Bell?
Yes.
Knight?
Yes.
Michelle's?
Yes.
Smith?
Yes.
Fisher?
Yes.
Keo?
Yes. Thank you, motion carries. We have no old business items to discuss. We do have 5 new business items. First one is the consideration of a repair to our 3rd well, or well number 3, for an amount not to exceed $9,000.
I'll move to approve that.
Motion by Smith,
Second.
second by Zach, I think.
Yeah.
Okay. I like it when you guys are fighting over the motion, that's good.
Which one got it?
We gave it to Michelle this time.
I heard both.
Yeah, there's really not much except for what's in here. We just are trying to head this off before it becomes, it's a small leak now, enough that it's, well, it's not visible, you can hear it, wherever that word is. It's auditorially noticeable when you take the casing off or the top off the well. So just want to get that repaired. We have the galvanized, the water just tends to eat through the, the raw water before it's been treated. So the plastic's been holding out well. From what we've seen. This is our last galvanized.
Okay. Any questions by council? All within budget or plan?
This is not planned, but we have contingency.
Okay. Ms. Jones, please call the vote.
Smith?
Yes.
Bell?
Yes.
Fisher?
Yes.
Knight?
Yes.
Michelle's?
Yes.
Keo?
Yes. Thank you, motion carries. New business item L2 is consideration of a multi-year tap fee agreement for 3075 Baker, which for the public is on the west side of Baker, just north of the alley between Forest and Grant. Okay.
Big
Okay.
area fenced off.
Big area fenced off, yeah.
I'll make a motion that we approve the agreement.
It's near Grandview,
Oh, okay.
kind of half block from
Yeah,
Grandview.
figure.
It's across from the dentist out of the yellow house, that alley. Motion by Smith. Second by Bell. To approve the tap fee agreement, okay. Any discussion needed?
Michelle, is that anything?
Zach, did you have a comment?
So this isn't consistent with the policy we adopt with resolution?
Correct. It's
Right,
not-
that's why you're seeing it. If not, we would have just signed it, so. But it is a hybrid project, it's a little bit different than anything we've
Because
seen.
it's got the residential and
Correct.
commercial, it's just a bit low.
Yeah.
This is the second time in the past couple months we've looked at something not consistent with policy.
Not since you, but I'm trying to.
We allowed a difference for the schools.
Yeah,
Is there something else?
that was probably the one I was thinking of.
Trying to remember if there's one.
Is it worth our while to continue to investigate, make a more flexible policy so we don't have to hold up projects to bring it here?
It actually doesn't hold up
Yeah,
the
'cause it's
contract.
final zoning.
It's just a matter of when she makes her payment, and if you would agree to this 3-year payment instead of standing by the resolution with just one.
Sometimes I think it's kind of hard to anticipate what,
Right.
we're getting a lot of different things now, and you think you have it covered with the new construction and the commercial that we added.
So she just wants to break it into 3 even payments, is that right?
Which is consistent with what we
Yeah.
allow other projects to do, it's just this one doesn't quite fit the bill.
Yeah. Just want to make sure I was understanding what we're talking about. Any other questions, concerns? Okay, Ms. Jones, please call the vote to approve the multi-fee tap fee agreement, 3 even payments.
Fisher?
Yes.
Smith?
Yes.
Knight? Yes. Michelle's?
Yes.
Bell?
Yes.
Keel?
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Motion carries. Well, then, thanks for their investment. The business item L3, consideration of reimbursement resolution for purchase of Dexter Hanover Road property.
I'll move the adoption of this draft resolution for this fellow here.
Second.
What page is that on? Hold on a second.
76 and 77.
Thank you. Motion by Michelle, second by Knight. Thank you both. Mr. Smith.
On here on page 75, it says the bond amount listed in the resolution is not to exceed amount of a potential future bond issue. And in here, it says on page 76 in 1B, it says that the amount is 7 million. At one time, we talked about it could potentially be as much as 10 million if we,
Right, that number just needs to be whatever you all are comfortable with.
Right.
It could be anywhere from 7 to 10, you can make it 20. It doesn't matter if I'm buying anything, but it can't be, now it could be that, the other thing I was thinking was, we talked about 2 different types of bond language too, where the fire station was part and then the city office was part. So yeah, it can be 10 million, it doesn't,
I guess I'd rather say 10 and then we're covered.
right,
Yeah.
that's fine. Because it's, like I said, it's not binding us to reimburse ourselves, it's not binding us to issue a certain amount of bonds, but if we
It's
want
to-
to,
Right.
we have to have it done.
If we want to, we have to have this passed within
Correct.
60 days of
Yeah.
of what?
Close.
Of when we close on the
When
property.
the money
That's what I was
transfer,
trying to think.
yeah. So this
And we
is,
closed on what date?
it was the end of August, so this is the last meeting before the deadline expires. I think it was August 26th or something.
Okay, so this just protects the option.
Correct. Yeah, we don't even have to do it in the end if we don't want to.
And to clarify too, the 7 million is our best guess for what it would be now. If it ends up more than that, this doesn't get thrown in the trash, correct?
Well, it needs to be a not to exceed amount. That's why Jim was saying maybe we make it 10, just because, I mean, I didn't have the new figures for the fire station when this was finally drafted, so maybe it should just be 10. I mean, like I said, the 10 doesn't,
Right, doesn't really mean it, it doesn't mean you're going for 10, but, yeah. If it ends up being 10, then, yeah, you're covered. Or if it ends up being 8, or,
So is this
5.
specific to just the fire station?
Yeah.
Yeah, and,
No,
well, I
the
think,
reason I asked that is if we end up bonding for both at the same time,
yeah, that's
are
not,
we within the limit of what this says? Or does this just?
Yeah, it would just
apply
be
to
for the fire station
It'd
piece.
be less than that.
no, it's just for the fire station piece.
Well, there's about a 50
And the sheriff.
chance we'll keep it under 10.
Yeah, and the sheriff too.
The way we're going.
I don't think it hurts to make it higher than it needs, it can always be less. in reality.
All right, that's what my motion was then.
So the motion on page 76 and 77 with the first whereas shown as 10 just for the protection of the option.
And 1B.
And 1B, yes, I was in there twice, yeah, sorry. Yep, okay.
Okay.
Everybody understand, is that okay with you tonight? Anything further you want? Any discussion about this? Okay, Ms. Jones, if you call the vote.
Bell?
yes.
Michelle's?
Yes.
Knight? Yes. Smith?
Yes.
Fisher?
Yes.
Keel?
Yes, motion carries. Thank you. New business item L4, consideration of the proposal from Urban Wireless Solutions for small cell ordinance assistance.
I'll move approval of task 1 in amount not to exceed $3,000, that being preparing and presenting materials to City Council and the other folks with the 5G technology. Support.
Motion by Michelle, second by Bell. Thank you both.
So if If you've got any questions, I'm happy to answer them. I figure I've already spoken so much tonight, maybe you don't want to hear anything more from me. But Mr. Weber, who provided the proposal, is here tonight in case you have any questions. So I don't know how to bring him up. And just to reiterate again, we went out for a proposal or asked a proposal from Mr. Weber because our attorney, Steve Esty, recommended him for the work that we needed when we contacted Steve initially.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Doug Weber. I'm the Managing Director for Urban Wireless Solutions. First of all, I want to apologize. I don't have a Honolulu blue and silver tie in my wardrobe, so I didn't have that. And I also wanted to thank you for indulging me. This is my daughter in the back of the room who's here for her civics extra credit, and she's a junior at Plymouth High School right now, so I appreciate that. I know you have a pack of materials that Michelle provided to you. I'm happy to answer any questions, or I can provide you a brief description of who Urban Wireless Solutions is, whatever your preference is.
So let me ask a couple questions. So all this is new to me.
Okay.
And maybe I should have thrown some of these questions out earlier, but so there were some pictures provided. Michelle, thank you for that. Doug, thank you. So what part is new? I mean, while I'm looking at these, is it the can at the top?
So,
and then the stuff in the middle? Or in one part?
Well, I guess new is a relative term. It's all new within, I would say, within the last 2 to 3 years.
I mean, new as it gets added to the pole. Is that what I'm looking at?
Yes. The can antenna that you see at the top, one of those is near downtown Plymouth. One is in Canton Township at the intersection of Haggerty and Warren Road in front of the Zaki headquarters. Those are 4G small cell installations. Michelle included the picture that I sent her. There's one that's in Dearborn that looks like it's 3 small panel antennas at the top of a utility pole. I don't know if she has that one or not. Yes, the one at the bottom left. That's in Dearborn, on Michigan Avenue, just off of Michigan Avenue in the West Dearborn Business District. That's a 5G installation. Those types of antennas is what Verizon is using right now. My dealings in this space have been primarily with Verizon. I've worked for Verizon for 14 years as a direct employee, and before that for another 10 years as an outside counsel and site acquisition agent. So my knowledge is with Verizon. Prior to that, just so you know, I worked for 5 years as an assistant city attorney for the city of Dearborn. So I have a little bit of knowledge on both sides of the fence here that I think is beneficial. The picture up at the upper right corner is actually in the Inner Harbor area of Baltimore. It's what they call a stealth installation. You see how the top of the pole is kind of bulged out a little bit. That's where the antennas are. That particular installation was done by Crown Castle, one of the top major tower companies in the country, and they are now delving into the small cell space. But that is one type installation you'll see maybe in a downtown area that's developed. Many of these others that you see in the other 3 are all here in Michigan, and what people are doing, or what the carriers are doing, is co-locating on utility poles, wooden poles, where they're available. You won't see too many yet in a downtown area unless they have an agreement with the city or anything of that nature. I can speak to Verizon. I know Verizon has a master agreement with DTE Energy. All these are energy poles that they are on. That is their quickest path to getting some of these installations in place and up and running. Where it's going to get tricky is when they need more of these in your downtown areas, downtown Plymouth, downtown Ann Arbor, where you have nice streetscapes, nice light poles, that sort of thing. There are all kinds of manufacturers out there that are now designing poles that accommodate this equipment and will not mess up the aesthetics of the downtown areas.
How frequent are they installed, Doug?
Pardon me?
How frequent? I mean, I see them on like one.
Spacing?
Yeah, like if we see this one, is this one of 20 in the area or what?
Well, so what you'll see, with the technology that Verizon uses, which is called millimeter wave, it's about 500 feet is about the space, give or take. Where it's like, yeah, where I was going to get to is where it's going to start to get tricky is, that's Verizon. We haven't really seen what AT&T is doing yet, what T-Mobile's doing yet. T-Mobile/Sprint, however that works out. And there will be a fourth carrier of some nature. So you're going to have these carriers that want to be in these downtown areas, and their networks require the capacity. And this is where municipalities in Michigan still have some latitude to do some things. As you know, the FCC adopted a regulation last year that kind of dictates this area. The Michigan State Legislature then took it upon itself to adopt a statute, and by the way, Michigan is one of 28 states that has adopted such a statute that lays out specifics of what you can charge for application fees, annual fees for co-location, what you can and can't do. Where you do have still some latitude is in terms of placement. Spacing, aesthetics, that sort of thing. And that's where my company's service could come in and kind of help you craft your ordinance so that it works with the Michigan statute and the FCC regulation and keeps you out of litigation, which I don't think anybody likes. There is a lot of that going on around the country. New York State has a bunch of it right now because they don't have a state statute in place. But
can we ask them to share equipment?
Share equipment? Not share equipment, but share space. I mean, that's what some of these pole manufacturers are grappling with right now, is trying to come up with structures that are still aesthetically pleasing, where multiple carriers can co-locate. It doesn't look like a Christmas tree or a big chimney or whatever in the middle of your street. They won't share equipment. I mean, I should qualify that. There may be some ability to share antennas, but the radio equipment, the little boxes from whatever side you see, those they won't share. So there's a lot of tweaks that still need to be done in this process. As we discussed internally in our office, it's kind of like the wild, wild west right now with this. Everyone is scrambling. They're trying to get their heads around what's the best process. And it's both sides. The wireless carriers, local governments are trying to get their heads around this. And it's kind of like the early days of wireless again, when towers were going up all over the place. People weren't sure how to deal with that. And now this is a whole new world, and people are trying to figure out the best way to deal with this. The purpose for my company is to try and bridge the gap a little bit, as my slogan says. And hopefully we can get the local governments talking productively with the wireless carriers and vice versa, because you probably know that over the years it's been kind of a love-hate relationship between the wireless carriers and local government. Any other questions you have, I'm happy to answer.
So how long would the first step of this take?
I can work with, cooperate with a timeline. We can probably do it by the end of the year if we needed to. And, depending on calendars and all that sort of thing. We have, believe it or not, we have the holidays coming up already and all that sort of thing.
So. Questions by council? Thank you for introducing yourself.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you. So we have a motion by Michelle, second by Bell. Or any changes, right? Just need to get in there, that's for not to exceed, or not to, was it not to exceed? Well, for a fee of $3,000. So that motion.
For task 1 on page 81.
Right. Very good. Okay, Ms. Jones, please call the vote.
Knight,
Yes.
Fisher,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Pleasant, or excuse me, Pleasant, Bell,
Yes.
Michelle's,
Yes.
Keo.
Yes, motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. New business item, thank you for coming to the meeting.
Thank you very much
Nice to
for your
meet you.
consideration. Nice meeting you, and I look forward to working with you.
New business item L5 is a discussion item for the Grand Street reconstruction project.
Yeah, so.
A future ribbon cutting opportunity.
Yeah. It has been bad for a long time, so maybe it is worth it. So yeah, our next project for next summer is Grand Street, something I think a lot of people are looking forward to because, especially the
They walked in
DPW.
the mailbox and they asked me when.
Yeah, so we'd like to get the letters out in the project area. We've met, Dan's met, Kurt's met several times. We've gone through this quite a bit with OHM, trying to figure out the best concept. Patrick's here, Marcus is here. I don't know if you guys know Marcus. He's helped us with various projects, but mostly behind the scenes. He actually works out of the Dexter office now, so he's kind of around to help more now. And then Dan, of course, obviously can answer any questions as well, because he's been through this quite a bit. But the concept is to widen it slightly, have a mountable curb. We were talking about the parking issue. Sometimes there is parking on Grand. It's mostly on the Matt Kowalski side of the street. What is that, the north side of the street? I think of it more as people, one direction. So it's kind of similar to how the roads are in Westridge, where, in Dexter Crossing, where it's kind of one side, but the road isn't striped. We have striped Grand in the past, though, so that would be a bit of a change. And it does get more bus traffic. So that's kind of something that we're tossing around, but that was the concept, was to widen it to 27 feet with the curve. We did have a resident request that we look into green stormwater options, but there's some issues, and we do address that in the resident letter that, or maybe it's not always on one of the two, where, you know, we did look at that, but with some of the slope of that road, it makes it challenging to implement.
This fixes the sanitary problem?
Right, yeah, so we know that there's a valley in the sanitary line.
A few
Valley, yes, multiple. So yes, it's a little bit more than what we were planning on, but I think that we should be able to do that. And it would be a big deal to get that taken care of, you know, when we have another problem. It is good to get that done. It doesn't make any sense to be in this area and not take care of it.
Can I add something to that?
Yeah. about
They're
moving
also proposing to get it out of the
Yeah,
road. which
moving
is
it into the
huge.
green belt.
Yeah, put it in the green belt, which is obviously what we've been doing for the last 20 years with the water, so that's a really big deal.
We're looking at October 30th for the resident meeting in the evening at Wiley, so that we could start the meeting at October 30th, 2 weeks from Wednesday, so that we can start the meeting at Wiley and then walk out onto Grand Street. Since we're close by, if people have individual site issues that they want to talk about, that works fairly well on Forest.
It's at 6.
I think it's going to be probably at 6, you know, 6 to to make sure the schools, I was thinking I need to make sure I send that to the schools too.
What's the location of that, please?
I think it's going to be at Wiley.
Wiley?
Yeah, that's where I'm trying to get it. That's where I originally, when we thought we could do it a few months ago, but we weren't quite ready. They had a room there we could use immediately or something. I just thought it'd be convenient for the residents.
So we're not going quite as far as the intersection, or are we, where the little study that they just did was?
So that would,
The warrant thing.
yeah, we'd come a little bit short of that. There's the change in pavement. One of the recommendations in the study was actually, if you go out there right now, there's kind of a taper. It would be to actually, could pull that in. This would certainly be the time to do that, but obviously.
That's what I was wondering. Okay. You've got that?
They kind of happened after.
Yeah, okay, so we'll incorporate one into the other. Great.
I guess one thing to kind of point out, just to kind of talk through the project a little bit. Marcus can probably give a little more detail on it. So some of the nuance of this particular street is the road itself, where it's at right now, is very close to the sidewalk. Typically when we reconstruct a road, if you go out to Central Street right now, it has what we call an F4 curve, which is basically a 6-inch high curve. Because we're so close to the sidewalk, we got to be careful about driveway grades. So we actually pulled a different detail in for that.
Yeah, so we'll be using a mountable curve detail, which will have 2.5 to 3-inch high, rather than the 6-inch. So like Patrick mentioned, the 6-inch curve over 3 feet of driveway grades, driveway approach grades approaching 17%, which is way too much. So with the mountable curve, we get them down in the 7% range where we like them. But I do want to point out, we'll see sometimes with mountable curve, there's not actual drops for driveways. That's not what we're proposing here. So we'll have the mountable curve, but we still will have the drop across the drive, so you're not going and bumping into the driveway. So it allows us to do two things really. It helps with the drives, and it also slightly reduces how much cut we have to do. We want to essentially put the new road back at the elevation of the existing. So when you put curb, then you kind of drop everything by a few inches. So we do save a couple of inches worth of work with that curb as well, most of the cost.
I think maybe the only other thing to note, this is kind of a little bit of a behind the scenes thing, but as Marcus, Dan, and Kurt have met, one of the things we're really trying to nail on this project is we are proposing to run some storm sewer up the road. We're going to do probably a little more on the front end, as done in the past, where we basically go out and identify where all the sewer leads are at and get those located in the field so we can avoid any conflicts through that. We did that back in 2013 on the Forest Street project, where we put the new storm sewer in on the Kovac side. It worked pretty well, so we'll use that here just to avoid any sort of conflicts. And one last thing on this, with the sewer work, this is really kind of a culmination of all the asset management work coming together here. We have identified through the work of the SAW grant and then just prior knowledge based on what Dan's experience with maintenance. We've identified assets that need replacement with the sanitary along Grand Street. We've also identified a culvert that has some issues with it, so there's a lining item on the estimate you'll see. So this is really, the approach here is that we reconstruct this road and then we really shouldn't have to be back for 20 years until we rehabilitate the mill and overlay. And that's really what asset management's all about, really finding out what those needs are, and when you're going to reconstruct, do it all so it doesn't come back. The water main itself was replaced in 2010, just as a little bit of a background there. So you'll have pretty new utilities here, which is not uncommon for a lot of the city when you look back at some of our main streets. This kind of needs to everything come together here.
Yeah, that includes franchise utilities as well. So we've notified DT and others let them know the project's coming. If they have any needs in the area, they need to get in there, get that taken care of, so they're not going to open the road.
And we're also going to use this as another opportunity. Well, with the resident letter, we're also going to send a project contact information sheet that we're going to ask all the residents to return, so that we can have a project contact list, because we haven't done that in the past, but I think it would be helpful. I mean, just for things like on the Central Street project, when a car all of a sudden needs to be moved, or you just need to contact an individual homeowner. Sometimes they're not home, or it's just hard to track them down. And so this way, if we can get most everyone in to return the forms, then we're going to have really good project contact info. And the other thing we're going to do is review their water service lines as part of the DEQ's push towards eliminating lead service lines, or not lead, but galvanized service lines. We're going to find out if we have any there, and then figure out if we need to replace them, or at least contact the homeowners to do the inventory. So eventually we'll be required to replace, I think it's like 5% of them a year to the homeowner, past the curb stop box to the house. And so we're going to use this, since we'll be contacting the residents anyway, as a kind of a pilot project on how that's gonna work moving forward too, so.
I think we suspect there's probably 4 or 5 on the street.
That are
Close to
galvanized.
2010.
So a couple of thoughts I have. One, maybe we can make sure that the schools are aware of this.
Yeah, no,
And that did we conclude whether or not there's gonna be a stripe down the middle or not? I know the picture shows the yellow line.
Well, it depends. I mean,
If
if
we
the
do-
parking is the issue, so I don't know if we wait for the resident feedback. I mean, I could change the wording of the letter slightly to say that's one thing we want feedback on, because if we stripe it, it can't be parking. So if we want it to be a little bit more flexible for parking, you know, but it is a higher traffic road than a subdivision road.
Okay, all right.
So,
It's not typically a major, so that's kind of been the decision when we strike.
right. But there must have been some reason why we started striping it.
I think we'll look at the site distance, that's the only thing I can really figure.
Yeah, coming up over the hill.
Yeah, that might be the only thing, we'll look at that, we gotta knock it down a little bit.
Would you like to comment on something, Mr.
Yes,
Lee?
I would. Are we concerned with the resident parking, or are we supplying parking for the school?
Well, you can't choose one or the other, but I mean, most of the time we get in trouble with residents when we eliminate their parking.
Okay. No, I understand
Yeah.
that.
I'm good with, good with the concept of signing it so there's parking only on one side. I just saw the yellow line, I
Right.
just want to clarify that.
It's still a bit of a debate.
Okay. At the intersection of Grand and Hudson, can we set it up so that the sidewalk ramps are in that intersection to go north? You know, we have that one set of sidewalk on the east side of the resident who built the new house up before us. Eventually, we'll want to connect that. Can we make sure that that intersection is prepped to go along the east side of Hudson, should we ever decide to do it? Does that make sense, Patrick? You know where I'm
Down
at?
at the intersection, yeah.
Of Grand and Hudson?
Yep, the Grand and Hudson right here, just so we can go this way, because we come down towards the alley.
But we're not doing sidewalk on that side of the street?
Well, we have a resident that put it over there, so if we prep this intersection, Paul actually made that point at one point in time when we were talking about the project, that we need to make it look like we're preparing for the future. So just,
On
you know,
that side.
so the sidewalk can, so you can walk around the intersection on sidewalk, and then you can eventually take off and go north. It looks like you're getting rid of you're closing the storm sewer there, so just an idea.
Off the top of your head, what's the radius for Inverness and Grant, the intersection there on the curve? It looks smaller than Central.
It's on the northeast corner there.
On both of them.
It's probably a 15.
Okay, I really like that radius. It slows you down cognitively. I'm going to ask this question since we're in the area. What would it take to put sidewalk on the other side of the street since we're in the area?
So we looked at, as we were going through the conceptual stages here, a couple of different alternatives, and one of them was to add sidewalk on the north side. So you'll notice, if you look at the aerial schematic in your packet there, this isn't, the right-of-way there is 99 feet. So what is legally right-of-way definitely functions as a front yard. It feels like a front yard. So there's a lot of landscaping. There's some grade challenges. So several driveways have retaining walls. So we looked at basically a 3-foot offset to mimic the south side on the north side. And that impacted, I believe it was 3 of the retaining walls, and it would be 6 tree removals.
Yeah, probably something.
There were 6 large tree removals that would be required. I have those. We had those cross sections that we worked with staff. I can certainly get that to you. We prepared it to evaluate what those impacts would be.
We just thought it would be a little impactful quite impactful to the residents on the north side, and also the project cost was only supposed to be around $600,000, and we're now above that, shockingly. So we're just trying to be a little bit mindful of,
Well, we
you
do
know,
have
since it
that-
is on one side of the
The
street.
other side functions, yeah.
Well, that's okay. If there's a way we can answer that question, so at least adjust the
Yeah.
text. Just look at
Yeah, we look at
enough
it, we
to
can
get
provide that information.
What would answer the question, Zach?
Well, just kind of a ballpark of, it sounds like you've already done a lot of the field work. Is it going to cost us $50,000 or $200,000 to do it? Again, it will be impactful.
Just cost
But-
but not impact,
Well,
is what you, I just want to make sure we get you what you need.
there is a bit of pain, but if you only have to rip off one Band-Aid instead of one now and another in 10 to 15 years, it could be a little less painful. So that
They're going to have to assess impact to do cost, so it's really both.
Yeah, we have that. We can,
Yeah.
Is that
It
something?
might mean the driveways are a little longer on that side, or the grading's a little more, and depending where they put it.
Is that something we share out and potentially discuss at a public meeting, or just have a thought on that?
Yeah.
Do you think you could have it by the next meeting?
But that's after.
yeah, we have it already. We had done that.
Well, but I mean, I guess I don't know what to put in the letter now to the residents. Do I tell them that's under consideration? Because they will want to know that.
Yes, they will.
The people on the north side will need to know that. So, I mean, I guess we could show a sketch with it like dotted in or something as a conversation, which will probably make the meeting a lot more interesting.
I suppose you could caveat and say that it's,
It's still being reviewed
budget,
for
it's
cost.
maybe budget driven too, but then at least to show what that impact looks like. If, kind of like you're saying, Zach, we're in there once, this is a good opportunity to gather all those comments, find out where people stand.
Maybe people would really want it and they don't care.
Right.
Matt, it'll be interesting.
It's just like a lot of people on Forest,
Right in front of Matt.
a lot of people on Forest, saw the illustrations with sidewalks on both sides.
Right.
And they didn't necessarily read everything. They just looked at the illustration and said, oh, they're doing sidewalks on both.
But it also preps them for the idea that
Yeah.
potentially there could be.
Yeah,
So-
but it wasn't clear that they were, just by looking at the illustration that, okay, right now, we're just doing the one. So,
If it's not too painful, it would be a good discussion to have as part of that meeting. They may all say, yes, we absolutely want a sidewalk, and then we figure out, they've got an already idea of the impacts and should at least get us close and, grenade close to cost by then.
I think probably the thing people are obviously most concerned about is trees and landscaping. And I think we've already kind of
We've already
identified
assessed
what
that.
has to go if that happens.
So yeah, I guess if we can just like add it as a dotted line or a potential whatever. And then we could still
No
get the
problem.
stuff out this week, because
Yep.
otherwise we can push the meeting to the 6th. If we have.
We can have it tomorrow.
Thank you for your work on it. Other council questions? Thank you to staff as well. We're planning ahead. Okay, seeing none, there's no action needed, that's a discussion item. Council comments this evening, starting with Andrew.
I have one.
How are you? Okay? Good. How's the football team?
We've had a little bit of a slump, but
Gotcha. Mr. Bell?
I just want to mention I'll be out of town later this week, so I'll miss the wastewater treatment plant open house. Sorry.
You can arrange a special tour if you want.
Okay. With cider and donuts?
Right, yeah. If you bring them, we'll leave them.
Fall call, you come with fall.
Right.
He's not gonna make it either.
There you go.
Good.
Ms. Fisher?
No, I'm okay.
Ms. Jones?
I would just like to report on something that we're doing at the museum. We've been doing, I In the past, we've always done the second graders out at Gordon Hall and come to the museum. And last year, we started with a archaeology dig and went out at Gordon Hall, and that's bringing in the college. We did something the past week with the seventh graders, a couple classes of them coming to the museum to look at our artifacts and then go back to a creative writing class to write a story, maybe not completely factual, but based on an item or something they've seen, a building or something from the past in Dexter, and it was quite interesting. It's a wonder, the second graders are great to talk to, but you talk a little bit more one-on-one with seventh graders, and they were very nice to have here.
Thank you. Mr. Smith?
No, I'm good.
Ms. Knight?
I have nothing, thank you.
Mr. Michelle's?
Just if you haven't seen Central Street, go poke there, it is looking really sharp.
The lights are on. Is that what you sent me? The lights are on?
They're on today. Well, they're only on half the day.
Yeah, it didn't look like all of them, but.
You guarantee the other side will come on.
Are you sure you want to make that comment?
Yeah.
They're on a little more dull sensor or something?
I think they're on 2 different circuits.
Gotcha. Okay, we are back around to non-arranged participation. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak this evening? Yes, sir.
2 questions.
Yes.
You spoke earlier.
Could you stand up and introduce yourself, please, at the podium?
I'm Bill Edwards. I live on 3rd Street.
Thank you, Bill.
Been here 5 years. You spoke earlier about property on north of Huron River Drive and a woman concerned about a parking lot, I believe?
Correct.
So my question is, you said there were no plans to build a parking lot, which isn't the same as saying there's no guarantee to not build a parking lot.
Correct.
So, is the decision to leave it flexible for use in the future?
The only decision that's been made is that we offered the appraised price for the property in hopes of having 90 days to further study whether or not it was a good idea.
Okay.
That's the only decision that's been made.
Okay.
There's obviously been discussion, when you have that conversation, there's discussion about how would you use it, what could be there, should we leave it natural, do we want to provide access, what do you do with the old barn, or the barn that's there, or the building?
But you're not tying your hands on that?
We haven't tied our hands to anything other than we put in some effort to get an appraisal.
Okay.
In cooperation with the Huron River Watershed Council, and then the offer has been extended, and we have not heard back from them. But I was just reporting that the neighbor next door to the northwest was concerned about that.
The only other question was, Michelle, you spoke about the gentleman here talking about the wireless network. I haven't been to all the other meetings. Did he come through a decision process of evaluating multiple companies, or how did that happen?
Yeah.
Please.
When we contacted the city attorney for assistance in dealing with the 5G small cell technology issue, the city attorney made the recommendation that we contact this gentleman.
Okay.
So no, we did not bid this. We considered it specialized area. So good question though. Thank you for your comments this evening and your attendance. Is there anyone else in the audience who would like to speak this evening? If not, I will seek a motion for adjournment and go Lions. Moved by Smith. Second by Bell. All in favor? Aye. Have a great evening.